Thanks for listening to another cozy mystery audiobook by Rosie A. Point. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Red Velvet Droplets, a Charlie Mission Cozy Mystery Book 3. Written by Rosie A. Point.
Chapter 1. Delta Mission had firmly cemented herself as my mortal enemy. She was pretty, funny, smart, outgoing, and she was a fantastic spy. She managed to draw people to her and maintain her cover by being that girl next door who's a little quirky, but also kind, whereas I was socially awkward. She even had a boyfriend, for Pete's sake. I stared at the accused from the front seat of my Mini Cooper, my eyes narrowed. The Mini had been parked at the Gossip Inn for a couple of weeks now because my grandmother had insisted that I stay over while our family member was here. Family member, I muttered. Barely know the woman, now she's a family member. A family member who my grandmother adored. And I was talking to myself about it, alone, in a car. Yet another reason Delta was better than me. I doubted she sat alone in cars or bedrooms talking to herself. This has to be the most Marsha moment in history. I took a breath, watching my long-lost cousin from afar. She sat on the swing seat, her e-reader in one hand, the other on the back of Snowy's furry white head. Sunlight, the traitor, had taken up residence in her lap, his eyes closed, and his ginger kitty face directed toward the cold winter sunlight. Delta's short auburn hair was tucked behind her ears, a pixie cut that made her look waifish and cute, and she wore a knit dress. Why she'd opted to sit out on the porch in the cold and read was beyond me. Couldn't she stay in her room like a normal person? Oof, you need to relax. Jealousy is making you nasty. But it was difficult. The woman made everyone smile, including my grandmother. I'd walked in on Gamma giving her a hug in the kitchen this morning. Gamma despised physical affection, so what was up with that? I scowled and glanced to the left, at the lurid ice cream truck she'd arrived in. It was colored in bright, obnoxious oranges and blues, with a massive ice cream cone on the top. Jerry's Gelato was printed across the side. The awning flapped in the winter breeze. I pictured Delta getting in that darn truck and leaving town about 50 times a day. How many months could I endure this torture? How many? The front door slapped open, and Delta's boyfriend, Mickey, strolled onto the front porch. Mickey was short, but incredibly handsome. He was the type of guy who could charm the basket off a snake, and he wore his black hair wavy. He sat down next to Delta and rested an arm around her shoulders. This close to Valentine's Day, and with things good but complicated with my sort of boyfriend, Aaron, I was not going to hang around and witness their cuddling. I got out of the Mini and slammed the door. Both of them jumped and looked up at me, but I doubted Delta's fright was real. She'd probably seen me coming a mile away. Her sharp green-eyed gaze flickered to my face and rested there, taking me in. Charlotte, she said. Jerry, I nodded. It was her cover name. Her boyfriend had no idea who she was because she was so darn good at hiding it. Mickey. I tried walking past them. Are you ready for the Valentine's Day bash? Jerry called out. I stopped, a step away from the Gossip Inn's doors. I've been helping Gamma decorate, if that's what you're asking. But Jerry's brow wrinkled. No, I mean, have you invited that handsome cop boyfriend of yours yet? Handsome, Mickey said, with a wry smile. Come on now, Jerry honey, I'm sitting right here. Jerry arched an eyebrow at him, just browsing the menu. Mickey affected a scandalized look. Even their flirting made me sick. Yeah, sure, I'm inviting him. You don't sound very excited, Jerry said, stroking Sunlight. I resisted the urge to summon my cat over. We'd been here since before Christmas, on Gamma's insistence, and Sunlight had taken well to living at the inn again with Snowy and Cocoa Puff. Out of all the cats, Coco was the only one who hadn't immediately decided Delta was the bee's knees on sight. It's Valentine's Day, I said. It comes around once a year. It's not like we're meeting the King of England. I've heard bad things about his temper, Jerry replied. And I've heard that Valentine's Day is a commercial holiday designed to sell cards and chocolates and flowers. Mickey's head whipped back and forth as he watched the exchange. Should I get a couple of pairs of boxing gloves? I have no idea what you mean, Jerry said, squeezing Mickey's leg. He winced. Me neither, I snapped. The darn woman with her darn short hair. When I'd come to gossip, I'd had to change my hairstyle and grow it out. Even now, I kept it at a reasonable length because that was part of my cover. But she just got to do whatever she wanted, didn't she? Delta stared at me and I stared right back, our expressions mirroring each other. It wasn't as if she'd done anything mean to me or I'd done anything to her, but the minute we'd met it was like two ginger cats in one house. Since you mentioned Valentine's Day, Mickey said slowly, any idea what's going on with the chocolates in the foyer? Huh? Delta and I said it at the same time, then glared at each other afterward. The chocolates, Mickey said. There's a heart-shaped box on the table in the foyer. It's velvet red with a cream bow, and oddly specific, I said. Delta narrowed her eyes at me. Honey, she said, turning to Mickey, you know you can't have more chocolates. Doctor's orders. Doctor's orders? I asked. He's been told to lay off the sweet stuff until his migraines abate, Delta said. Especially chocolate. It's one of his triggers. Good thing he works on an ice cream truck then, I replied. You two really don't like each other. Mickey's gaze moved between us. I don't have any strong feelings toward Charlotte, Delta said, pleasantly. Right back at you. I couldn't help being snippy. The woman got under my skin, and I didn't like how I acted around her. I turned and walked toward the entrance of the inn, my blood boiling from the exchange. I had to keep things calm. See you later, Charlotte. I'm sure the Valentine's Day bash is going to be a hit, Delta called. And I wasn't sure if it was a jab, because I had helped set everything up, or if she was being sincere. I didn't care. There was tension in the air. A sense of unease in our perfect small town. It had to be Valentine's Day driving everyone crazy. I walked past the uncollected box of chocolates and started up the stairs, focused on anything but Delta mission. Chapter 2. You look beautiful tonight. Aaron drew me into a hug and pressed a kiss to my cheek. I didn't think you'd dress up. He'd chosen a black suit with a white cotton shirt, and his cologne had that leathery scent that made my stomach twist. Why? Huh? Why didn't you think I'd dress up? I asked. Because I'm not the type who likes to look pretty? Charlie, are you good? I licked my lips, then took a breath and smoothed my hands over my silk red dress. Sorry, I said. Sorry, I'm a tad on the defensive side. You don't say. The corner of Aaron's lip lifted. What's eating your shorts? I glanced left and right in the Gossip Inn's foyer, with its trinkets on polished tables and paper hearts hanging from the chandelier. That box of chocolates was still on the table. None of the guests had collected it. It's one of the guests, I said, because I couldn't reveal that Delta was related to me and Gamma, or I'd blow my cover. Oh? Jerry, I said, nearly stumbling over the fake name. She's interesting. Interesting like a good book? No, interesting like something you find on the underside of your shoe after a hike through the sewers, I said. People hike in the sewers? I grasped his arm and steered him toward the Gossip Inn's dining room. This is not the point. The point is, well, just see for yourself. Delta wore a cream-white cocktail gown that perfectly complemented her auburn hair. It was strapless, with a fitted bodice, and she'd already gathered a crowd of people. They laughed and joked, listening to her talk, but of course she knew just the right amount to listen to them too. And Lauren, the chef at the inn, who I considered my best friend, hung on her Delta's every word. The only positive was that Gamma hadn't joined in the fun. She was flirting with the dentist on the other side of the room. I scowled. I'm failing to understand what the problem is, Aaron said, ruffling his hair. She's talking to people, and this upsets you. Correct. Gay. Why? Because she's talking to people and it upsets me. That's very transparent of you, Charlie, he said. I can totally relate to you right now. Oh, now you're taking her side too. Aaron turned me toward him and took my hands, squeezing them gently. I'm going to need you to explain. You're upset with her because she talks to people and? She's perfect, I whispered. Look at her. Perfectly polite and nice, and she has her whole life together. Huh, but you're perfect too. My heart did a funny dance in my chest. You're sweet. And you don't need to be jealous of anyone, he said. Because you're out of this world, Charlie, and in my opinion, nobody can compare to you. I narrowed my eyes at him. How many drinks have you had? I just got here. Gamma managed to detach herself from her flirting and came over. She greeted Aaron with a quick kiss to both of his cheeks and a compliment, then turned to me. Charlotte, have you made sure all the guests came down this evening? That they received their invitations? Of course. Why do you ask? I don't see Mr. Schilling anywhere, she replied. We've been waiting for him to come downstairs. Have you heard, Aaron? About? Hank Schilling is here, she said. Oh, come now, surely you've heard of Hank Schilling. The featherweight boxer? There's an exhibition show next week. He's going to be fighting one of the boxers local to the county. What's his name? Ned Jones. Don't. Memorable, Aaron said. I snorted a laugh. Don't snort, Charlotte. It's not ladylike, Gamma said. You'll scare off the guests. I rolled my eyes. I'm not sure where he is, actually. I think I saw his girlfriend come down earlier. I scanned the room and spotted her near the fireplace. Kaylee Ortega was a beautiful young woman with curly dark hair who'd arrived at the inn with her boyfriend. They'd checked into separate rooms. She was in lavender, he was in blue, but they'd been inseparable since their arrival, eating every meal together, hardly ever in a different room. But tonight... That's interesting, I said, nudging Aaron. Look there. Schilling's girlfriend is schmoozing with the opposition. Ned Jones was the opposite of his name. Slight, with a shaved head, 2 slashes for eyebrows, and a penetrating gaze that drew attention. He looked powerful, on the verge of fighting, but right now, he wore a goofy smile as he talked to Kaylee. Before I could comment, Delta strolled over, smiling and radiant and all the things a woman should be at a party. The minute she joined us, her smile dropped. Has anyone seen Mickey? I pretended to check my pockets. Not here. Did you forget to put him on his leash? Charlotte, Gamma hissed. What the devil has gotten into you? Don't worry about her, Georgina, Delta said. She just can't stand that there's a newer model in town. I glared at her and she glared right back. Okay, this is awkward, Aaron said, and guided me away from them. Gamma and Delta stood nearby, talking softly, and then Delta excused herself and exited into the hallway. Charlie, you need to let it go. I looked up at Aaron. What do you mean? Whatever weird ego thing you've got going on with her. Let it go. You can't let it control you, he said. I appreciated the wisdom, but he had no idea what this was about, or how much I'd been through, or the fact that I had finally found a home in gossip, and now a woman who was essentially better at being Charlotte than me had arrived in town and just taken over. Excuse me, I said. I need to use the ladies' room. Charlie, wait. But I kept walking. Aaron was right, and that infuriated me. I had to take a second to think this through. I shouldn't be this angry about having a new family member, even one who was great at what she did. Better than I had ever been. I exited into the hall just as a thump sounded upstairs, followed by a shout. Chapter 3. I took the stairs 2 at a time. In the Gossip Inn, it was never right to assume that a thump or a yell was innocent. Most people would dismiss a noise like that for a cat knocking a lamp off a table or someone dropping their bag and yelling out of frustration or fright. But in the inn? The cat thing might be true, but chances were we had a dead body on our hands, or a guest needed help. The first floor was empty, but on the second, I found a short, lean man standing in the hallway, scratching his dark brow. Hank Schilling himself, dressed in reds and whites for Valentine's Day. What's going on? I asked. You're the maid, right? I'm helping out around the inn. Not that it's relevant at a time like this. What's going on? I heard a noise. Me too, he said. I think it came from there. He pointed to the cerulean room, which flanked the blue room on the left. I didn't have an eye for design, so the cerulean room had always been the blue room 2.0 in my mind. I approached the door, listening hard. There was movement inside the room. I knocked, and the door drifted inward to reveal my cousin. Delta stood over the supine form of her boyfriend. She held the velvet red box of chocolates in one hand. Her jaw dropped, lips parted. Mickey lay on the floor, one hand grasping a half-eaten chocolate. Chocolates were scattered across the pretty blue carpeting. "What?" Hank said behind me. "Jerry? Jerry." She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. She was in a state of shock. Had to be. "Help," she whispered, taking a trembling step backward. "We need to call an ambulance." And then she dropped the box of chocolates and wiped her hands on her pretty cream dress, smearing chocolate on the fabric. She dropped down beside her boyfriend and checked his pulse, then started CPR. I turned toward Hank. "Do you have a phone on you?" He glanced past me at Mickey, licked his lips, then nodded once. "Yeah, I'll call him." And then I ran downstairs to fetch Aaron. I wasn't the type who liked to rely on the police to figure things out, but this was different. This was Delta, and I couldn't remain impartial and investigate. Which wouldn't be fair to her. Surely my spy cousin wouldn't have killed her boyfriend, would she? Aaron, who had guided Delta off to one side, came over to where I'd positioned myself at the head of the stairs. "I need you to make sure that everyone stays inside, downstairs, until law enforcement gets here." His gaze slid toward Gamma, who stood beside me, wringing her hands. "Nobody comes in or goes out until we've got this situation under control." "Very well," Gamma said, but her voice shook. "Very well, but really, detective, you can't tell me that you think Jerry is actually to blame for this." "I can't make any deductions without further investigation. You know that." I didn't make an argument for Jerry's innocence, possibly because I was an incredibly petty woman, but also because I'd found her standing over the body. That was damning evidence. As was the velvet box of chocolates. The chocolates that had arrived at the inn under mysterious circumstances. "Just make sure nobody leaves, all right?" Aaron squeezed my hand before walking off. "What about Mr. Schilling?" I gestured to the featherweight boxer waiting nearby. The man shifted his weight from one foot to the other and swallowed repeatedly. "Take him downstairs too," Aaron said. "I'll talk to him when I'm done here." "Come now, Mr. Schilling." Gamma put out a hand, guiding him toward the staircase. "This way. We'll get you something to eat and drink, shall we? Preferably a sugary treat." Hank glanced over his shoulder as we descended the stairs. Those dark eyebrows turned to slashes, but he didn't say a word. Once we'd reached the ground floor of the inn, Hank headed into the dining area alone, where the party was still in full swing. Gamma shut the inn doors and locked them, shaking her head. "Charlotte," she whispered. "What if this ruins everything?" I folded my arms. "Oh, come on, Charlotte, don't you look at me like that. This is important, and you know it," she said. Jerry's, but she cut off as another person wandered out into the hall. I intercepted the guest. "I'm sorry," I said, "but you have to stay in the dining area. There's been an accident." "What kind of accident?" The guy wriggled his lips from side to side and gave me a withering stare. Fortunately, I was used to those types of looks from guests. "Well," I said, "a man has died, the police are on their way, and unless you want to get arrested, I suggest you stick to the dining area." The guy jolted on the spot, his double chin wobbling, and then hurried back into the dining area. "Really, Charlotte," Gamma said, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. "Contain yourself." "Contain myself?" I whispered. "How about Jerry contains herself instead and doesn't go around murdering people when she's supposed to be flying under the radar?" "You know she didn't do it," Gamma said. "Charlotte, surely you're going to help her." I didn't answer. What was I supposed to say to my grandmother? Yes, I would be more than happy to help the woman that had effectively replaced me, I was this town's fixer, but Jerry wasn't a part of this town. And I was struggling to see her as a friend. "You're not this petty," Gamma said. "I raised you better." The latter sentence was exhaled, barely audible. "That's the thing," I replied. "You raised me, not her. So why is she so much more important than me at the moment? What else is going on here? I've never seen you this shaken up about a dead body, not really, since I moved to town. What's the deal?" "I want the truth, Georgina. What does she have over you?" "Heavens," Gamma said. "This is far too dramatic for my liking. She doesn't have anything over me, Charlotte. Just like you don't. Perhaps I'm getting worse at hiding my emotions in my old age, but I don't want the peace of the inn disturbed, or one of my contacts taking the fall for a murder. I'm sure Jerry can help herself, given that she's simply a much better version of me. It tasted sour on my tongue. I wasn't this person, was I? The type of person who couldn't keep their ego in check because of my past." "You know that's not true," Gamma said. "You have different strengths, and that's normal, and fine." Sunlight meowed from near the etched, heavy wooden door to the kitten foster center. I went over to him and collected him in my arms, burying my head in his ginger fur and shutting my eyes. "I need a moment." "All right," Gamma said, "but if I had needed a moment when you'd first returned to gossip for help, we wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place. Put your darn ego aside, Charlotte, and do what you do best." Chapter 4. Gamma's words stung, and that was because she was right. I'd let my judgment grow clouded because of my past and my insecurities. I could identify that, but it didn't make this any easier. I didn't want to help Jerry, but I would always want to help Gamma and our wonderful small town. I gave Sunlight one last kiss and received purrs and face rubs I didn't deserve. Finally, I put him down and turned toward my grandmother. Except she was gone. This is all wrong. Jerry and I despised each other, but I didn't want to wind up despising myself. And that meant I would likely wind up helping her, if I could. If she'd even let me. I entered the dining area just as the music was turned down. Guests had taken seats at tables that had been pushed back to provide room to dance. Others stood back, lining the walls, champagne glasses in hand, exchanging confused glances. Gamma stood in the center of the room. "I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your evening," Gamma said, "but there has been a murder." Ripples of conversation ran around the room. Hank sat at a table with his girlfriend, Kaylee. Nearby, Ned, Hank's chief competitor, stood frowning and shaking his head. The guy who'd tried to dip out to the bathroom was pale and clutching the hem of his jacket, constantly pulling it down over his stomach. Gamma cleared her throat. "Thankfully, we have a detective in attendance at the party. He's currently handling things but has asked that nobody leaves the dining area until law enforcement arrives." "But what if we need the restroom?" "Yeah, what if we need to get home?" "I have a sitter who's waiting for us to get back." "Enough," I snapped. Head swiveled toward me. Gamma's gaze filled with hope, but I broke eye contact with her. "If you really think that your personal problems are more important than a murder case, leave," I said. "The cops will track you down later and likely question you at length. There's the door," I pointed. Nobody moved. My grandmother sighed. "Charlotte is correct," she said. "I will escort those of you who need the bathroom there and back." "What gives you the authority?" the suited guest asked. "This is my inn," Gamma replied, giving him the steeliest of looks. The look that she was infamous for, that ensured people listened or else. The man opened his mouth as if he wanted to argue but thought better of it. "We'll keep serving refreshments to ensure you remain comfortable throughout the evening." And then she started making her rounds through the room, talking to the guests. In the past, my sweet Charlotte cover would have come into play. I would have tried to keep my temper, but as time had passed in gossip, I'd started revealing more of who I was. Nice, but a little socially awkward. Okay, a lot socially awkward. Lauren bustled out of the kitchen doors and stopped beside me. "A murder?" she asked. "Hey, Laura." I filled her in on what had happened. Lauren gasped and placed a hand to her mouth. Her red hair was up, and she wore her chef's jacket because as the inn's chef, she was catering the entire party. "Oh no," she whispered. "That's terrible. Poor Jerry." "Et Lauren?" "Ha, door. You like her, don't you?" I asked. "She's a nice person." "Or, she has been to me," Lauren said. "I notice that you two don't exactly get along." There's the understatement of the century. "It's probably because you're so alike." Lauren wiggled her eyebrows. She was the only civilian in gossip who knew about what we were. Spies in hiding, retired spies in hiding to be specific. "We are not alike," I hissed. "I mean, really? Y'all are both talented, beautiful young women. The only difference is, she's still working and you aren't. Not in that way. Looks like nobody's going to enjoy my red velvet cake this evening." "What a waste." "Don't say that," I replied. "I'm still staying at the inn for the next week or two. Trust me, I'll eat all the cake you've got, and then some." "You're too sweet, Charlie." But I wasn't, because Gamma was upset. Jerry had potentially killed her boyfriend, but most likely not, and I was the only fixer in town, meaning that the task should have fallen to me. I gave Lauren a quick hug, then set off through the inn's beautifully decorated dining area. I passed several groups of people having conversations. How long is this going to take? Who died? Never mind who died. Who did it? Do we know who the victim? I found Hank Schilling and Kaylee sitting near the front windows, holding hands over the table, locked in intense conversation. "Sorry to interrupt," I said. "Hank, do you think I could chat with you for a moment?" Sure." "What about?" Kaylee asked, eyeing me. "Jealousy? Interesting. Unlikely, but interesting." "Relax. You don't have to analyze every conversation." But that was my default setting after spending so much time in gossip and as a spy. It was difficult not to read into people's behaviors. "Sure," he said and rose from the table, then shook his head. "Actually, maybe we should stay here. Not like there's anywhere we can go to talk in private." He sat back down and gestured for me to pull up an empty chair. "Thanks." I took a seat. "Look, Hank, I wanted to." "I know who you are," Kaylee said. "Huh. I know who you are and what you do." "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" Hank asked, taking her hand again. These two couldn't stop touching for a minute. "She's an investigator," Kaylee said, lowering her tone. "Not like the police, but a private investigator." "I'm a fixer." "But how did you know that?" I asked. "You're not from around here, are you?" "I have family in town. My mother used your services." "Wait, you're Maria Ortega's daughter?" I asked. "That's right." She gave me a quick flash of a smile. She was really happy with how you dealt with her issue with the brooch. "It was my pleasure to help." "So what do you want to talk to me about?" Hank asked. Kaylee clicked her tongue, then patted him on the arm. "Really, Hanky baby?" "Hanky baby?" "What?" "Isn't it obvious? She wants to talk to you about the guy who died." Hank scratched his brow, which was prominent. "I didn't know him," he directed that at me. "I didn't think you did," I said. "But I'm curious about what you heard or saw." I kept my voice low, but smiled, sitting forward as if we were engaged in a normal conversation. "Since you were the only one on that floor apart from the victim and his girlfriend, I'm curious." "I heard yelling," he said. "Wait, no, okay, let me try to get this in order. So I came upstairs because I wanted to grab my gift for Kaylee for Valentine's Day." Kaylee touched her hand to a beautiful necklace on her throat, a bright smile parting her lips. "I went into the bedroom, grabbed the box, and then I heard a door open in the hall, and shouting afterward, like a man and a woman arguing." "Did you hear what they were arguing about?" "No," he said, "but it sounded bad. They were getting real loud, and then all of a sudden it went quiet, and there was a thump." Kaylee's smile had faded. "Oh, I'm so sorry you had to experience that, Hanky baby." "Yes, I'm sorry, Hank," I said. But was there anything else that happened when you were up there? Anything you think might be relevant? No, just what I heard, and then you came upstairs. I nodded. I had come upstairs in a rage, even though it was a dumb move, but I couldn't help wondering what would have happened if I hadn't been there. Thanks, Hank. I appreciate the information. And then I left them to their romantic interlude. Hank wasn't too shaken up. I'd seen people collapse and faint after seeing a dead body. Did that mean he was involved? Didn't seem like it. He'd been next door, and unless he was lying, this seemed like an open and shut case. One that wouldn't work out in Jerry's favor, or ours for that matter. The last thing the gossip in, and my grandmother, needed was more attention. A cover blown. We'd been through enough in the past few months. I walked over to where Lauren stood but kept my mouth shut, folding my arms and leaning against the wall. Something was off about this. Fine, so Jerry and Mickey had had an argument, all good and well, but an argument over what? And if this was an argument, that would have to mean that this was a crime of passion. Poisoning didn't fit the bill. Assuming my guess about the chocolates being poisoned was correct. And if the chocolates were the cause of death, and not some other spy-like method, then a crime of passion was likely not the cause, which meant the arguing might not be relevant. Where on earth had those chocolates come from? And why had Jerry and Mickey been upstairs with them? Mickey had an affinity for chocolates, but would he really have taken someone else's box of chocolates and then, what? Tried to share them with Jerry? Eaten them on his own? I would have to talk to Jerry about this, if I decided to get involved. Chapter 5. Later that night, I sat on my bed, phone in hand with Cocoa Puff and Sunlight for company. Snowy was outside, keeping the gardener's dog entertained. The pair had a friendship bond that often drew attention from the guests at the inn because of how they played and even took naps together. I stroked Sunlight's head, frowning. Aaron hadn't texted me yet, and Delta was still down at the police station being interviewed. Gamma was likely awake and in her bedroom, and there was a police line and a seal on the door to Mickey's bedroom. What am I going to do? I asked. Sunlight gave a low purring meow. For heaven's sake, it's not like it's my responsibility to save her. But the words were wrong. It wasn't about responsibility. It was about doing the right thing for my family. That was one of my core values. When I'd had nothing, Gamma had been there for me, even when she could have turned me away. My phone rang in my hand. Aaron's name flashed on the screen. Hello? Hello? Hey, gorgeous, he said. Can you come downstairs and unlock the doors for me? I want to talk to you about something. Sure. And then I hung up. Aaron and I were a relatively fresh concept. We certainly hadn't said the dreaded 3 words yet, and he didn't usually visit me this late at night. I slipped on a fluffy robe, tucked my hair behind my ears, then went downstairs to let him in. Coco had stayed behind, but Sunlight chased my heels, meowing in excitement. I'm not giving you a midnight snack, if that's what you think, I said. I opened the doors and found Delta and Aaron standing side by side. Thanks, Delta said, and swept past me, her eyes red-rimmed. Good night. And thank you for the ride home, Detective Good. She called that over her shoulder as she started up the stairs. Once she was safely out of sight, hopefully out of earshot, I stepped further back to admit Aaron. What did you want to talk to me about? I asked, because it would be ridiculous to be jealous about Aaron giving Delta a ride back to the inn. My boyfriend's brow wrinkled, and he stroked a hand over the stubble on his chin. You're not interested in what happened with Jerry. Huh? Why should I be? A breath. Let's talk in the library. So this wasn't a romantic talk then, but something else. Color me intrigued. I shut the inn doors and locked them, then followed Aaron into the library. Sunlight joined us, leaping up onto a green velvet armchair and digging his claws into the fabric. I shooed him, then sat down. The fire in the grate had long since crackled down to embers. Aaron stood across from me, arms folded. You're not interested in helping Jerry at all. Usually you jump on the chance to meddle in murder investigations. What changed? Nothing, I said. I haven't been asked to investigate this one, but Gamma had implied it, and it's not my problem. That's not like you, Charlie. I sandwiched my hands between the backs of my knees and the armchair. What does that matter? Is that what you wanted to talk to me about? Not really, but it certainly adds to your mystery, he said. My mystery? Sure, he replied. I know you're not who you say you are. A cold chill washed over me. Huh? When I'd gotten involved with Aaron, I told him that there were certain things I would never be able to tell him. If I filled him in, it would put his life in danger. I know that you aren't who you say you are, he repeated. After you came to see me in the hospital, gave me that speech, I was intrigued. Aaron, you can't be serious. I told you that there were things I couldn't tell you, and you took that as what, your cue to poke your nose where it didn't belong. Just following your example, he said, but the smile on his face was light, relaxed. I requested. Requested? You didn't request anything. You warned me. And that's not something you can do to me and expect that I won't figure out what's up. Aaron tucked his hands behind his back, rocking onto the balls of his feet, then back down again. I know you're important, that you're here for some other reason than to be a fixer in this small town. I kept my fat mouth shut. If I hadn't been so worried about being honest, none of this would have happened. And I know this because I ran a background check on you. Miss Charlotte Smith, he said, you used to have long dark hair, but you cut it and changed it. Your dress style has changed too. And so, So that's interesting to me. Aaron swept his gaze over my face. What's even more interesting is that there's not much record of you anywhere else other than in gossip. There was a breadcrumb trail of you in New York, and then nothing else. The trail for Charlotte Smith disappears entirely. There's mention of your parents, but their trail stops quickly too. It's all very well done. Anyone else would search you up and not think too much about it. After all, who does a full genealogy check on a small-town girl who likes to sleuth when she shouldn't? No idea what you're talking about. I relaxed my shoulders and gave him a smile. I think you're just reading too much into everything. Really, Charlie? You're going to gaslight me? Fair. I'm not trying to gaslight you, I said. But I told you, look, I wish you'd forget I said anything. You did the right thing by telling me, he replied. I know that you want to get to know me better. It would eat me up inside if I was in your shoes. He came forward and dropped to his haunches in front of me, placing his hands on my knees. Look, I don't know all the details, but I can surmise that you're important, and that's okay, I understand. And I'm here to support you. I just wanted you to know that. Support me? Yeah, your secret, whatever it is, it's safe with me. I wanted you to know that. I didn't have a reply for that. Aaron rose and gave me a kiss on the cheek, then left me sitting there. The inn doors shut a few seconds later. I snapped myself out of my reverie and went to lock them. This was not ideal. Aaron figuring out anything was my fault, and if he followed that trail, I might wind up leaving gossip for good. My heart pounded at the memory of his words, that he would support me, keep my secret. But the last time I'd trusted a man, my ex-husband, it had turned out terribly. A creak on the stairs drew my attention. Delta stood on the landing. Charlotte? She swallowed. Can I talk to you for a minute? Chapter 6. Delta clicked the door shut and gestured for me to take a seat in the green room. I'd never liked the green room. Too much color, far too spacious and comfortable. And ironically enough, green was the color of envy. I sat down on a wingback armchair, tracing the silken texture of the upholstery with my fingertips. Delta paced back and forth, rumpling the Persian carpet underfoot. It was the first time I'd seen her ruffled or upset for that matter. Look, she said. Look, I know that you hate me and I don't like you very much. Great way to start this conversation. She fluffed her auburn hair on the top but turned toward me. I don't know why, but you just get under my skin. You're so uninhibited. You're not afraid of doing the wrong thing, whereas I'm cute, perfect, always playing by the rules? Whatever, she said, and swallowed nervously. I need help with this one. I need Mickey is dead. You cared for him? I loved him, she said. He helped me buy the food truck. He spent every single day with me, building the business, and he loved me, even when I couldn't tell him the truth. I wet my lips. Did you tell him? Delta froze in place, her hands at her sides balled into fists. She closed her eyes. Did you tell him? I repeated. Just before the Valentine's Day bash, she said. I couldn't do it anymore. The lying. The pretending. I can do it as my job, but to do it with him. When he'd been so kind, so perfect, so loving. How? How is a person supposed to keep secrets like that from the people they love? She walked to her bed, dropped down on all fours, and started rooting around underneath it. What on earth are you doing? Delta was taller than me, lean and muscular. It was clear she really paid attention to her physique, probably so she could keep in prime. She reappeared from underneath the bed, holding a box of chocolates in her hands. It wasn't a velvet box, but a wooden receptacle that was stuffed full of treats. She brought one out and hastily unwrapped it, then shoved the whole thing into her mouth, chewing audibly. Ooh, Auntie Wen? She asked, shoving the box toward me. I stared at her ever-chewing mouth. I'll pass. Oot yourself. And the chewing continued. This is not good, I said, tapping my chin. First off, why would you want my help? Delta swallowed, her fingers fumbling on the wrapper of the next candy bar. You're a fixer. And you're, a spy. You can figure this out on your own, surely. I don't specialize in investigating murder cases, she said, and I'm too close to the subject matter. She shoved another candy bar into her mouth. Look, none of this is good, if you want my honest opinion. You told Mickey about your true identity, and then he turns up dead, I said, ticking it off on my fingers. You were found standing over his body. I'm assuming that the chocolates were poisoned. Delta nodded. So that was confirmed. And now you have a box of your own candy bars stashed under your bed. She swallowed her mouthful. Yeah, so that Mickey would never find them. He has. Had an issue with chocolate, like he was addicted to the stuff, and he didn't know when to stop. I was worried that he'd find them and eat them, and it would affect his health. When you say addicted, like he had zero self-control when it came to chocolate. Zero. She held up her hand, creating a ring with her thumb and forefinger. His father was a chocolate maker. Like Willy Wonka's dad? Who's Willy Wonka? You are kidding me, I said. Good morning, sunshine. The world says hello. Delta blinked. Maybe you're right. Maybe you can't help me after all. Real mature. Delta ate another candy bar, but she'd lost speed, and she stared at the half-eaten chocolate in her hand, shaking her head. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I can't believe he's gone. The bedroom door opened, and Gamma entered. She shut it behind her and locked it. The worst part is, she said, you're not keeping your voices down. Anyone could listen in on this conversation. Georgina, Delta said. Your cover is blown, Gamma breathed the words out. I've spoken with your grandfather and you're to leave within the next 2 weeks. The words were clipped and hard, but Charlotte and I will solve the murder before that happens. Apparently that was happening without my consent. You will? Delta asked. I'll help in whatever way I can. Gamma and Delta both stared at me expectantly. Fine, I threw up my hands. I'll help, but I need more information. I'll track down what type of poison was in the chocolates and where they came from. I'll inform you once I have enough information, Charlotte. Good evening, girls. And then she unlocked the door and left. Delta abandoned her candy and went over to the doorway, peeked out into the hall, then shut the door and came back inside. What was that about? She asked. She was so cold, detached. That's Georgina, I said. She's gone into full-scale mission mode. Excuse the pun. The family last name was Mission. She wants to help you get to safety and protect the inn, and that means moving fast. I was enjoying it here, Delta whispered. It's the first time I've felt at home since I was compromised. I miss my friends, my parents. You have parents? I didn't just wink into existence. Here I was thinking you crawled out of a hole in the ground. Funny, Delta said, rolling her eyes. But then tears came again, and I grimaced. It was a joke, Jerry. I'm sorry. It's not that. It's just Mickey, she whispered. I was a fool to fall in love, to tell him the truth, and now he's gone. I leaned back in the armchair, considering. Delta was emotional, and that was a weakness and a strength. I tried to remove my emotions from the equation completely and study the case impassively. First prize, I said, would be figuring out where those chocolates came from. I'll start by asking around the inn. Somebody has to have seen who delivered them. They didn't have a note on them, did they? No, Delta said. No note. I told him not to touch them, but he couldn't listen. He just couldn't contain himself when it came to the darn chocolates. I left him alone for a second. How did you find him? What actually happened? I told him the truth about me, and he asked me to leave so he could process it, she said. I went downstairs and talked with a few of the guests, and then I left to go find him, and he was pigging out on the chocolates. I was so mad, I yelled at him, because of his health, because it was dangerous. I grabbed a chocolate out of his hand, threw it down on the floor, threw another one at him, and then he just keeled over. I nodded. All right, I'll help. Just stay out of my way. Roger that. Chapter 7. Charlie, could you run out to the shroom shed and get me some button mushrooms? Lauren asked, from behind the gas stove. She'd been cooking since 5 in the morning, possibly because she wanted to provide the guests with sustenance during a disturbing time. That, or she was tense herself. Lauren dealt with that kind of tension by cooking. She'd cooked her way through revelations, through murder mysteries, and through her pregnancies. I imagined those had been particularly stressful to deal with. Sure can, I said, and used the kitchen door to slip out onto the gravel pathway that ran around the inn. The greenhouse was occupied by Quentin, our gardener, and I gave him a wave as I passed by. Every now and again, I'd spot him working on the plants or the expansive yard and remember smolder. It was a strangely painful memory, given that we'd parted ways amicably. I put those thoughts aside and headed around the back of the inn, the basement doors painted with luminous mushrooms. I unlocked it and descended into the dank interior, then headed straight for the small shed-like construction where Lauren grew her prized mushrooms. My phone blipped when I was halfway through picking. I fumbled it out, spraying soil everywhere. It was a text from Gamma, who was likely in her underground armory, watching my every move. Need help in there, Charlotte? I'm fine, thank you. Did you find anything out about the chocolates? Not yet. I'm currently hunting down possible sources for the poison. It looks like cyanide. A fairly common poison and not that difficult to get your hands on, even in this day and age. Used in a lot of industries. I left the shroom shed with my basket of button mushrooms and returned to the kitchen to clean and help Lauren prep the rest of the breakfast. While I'd been staying at the inn, I'd committed to helping Gamma and Lauren around the place. Which only reminded me that soon, I'd be leaving. Because Delta would no longer be here, and the happy family act would be gone. The rest of the morning flew by, until, finally, I headed out the front doors for a breath of fresh air. I sat on the porch swing, my mind on what had to be done. Questioning suspects, except there were none. Finding out where the chocolates had come from. How? Gamma had cameras all around the inn. She surely would have seen something. Can I get the camera footage for the week leading up to the Valentine's Day bash? Yes. Sending to your laptop as we speak. I got up and headed back inside, stripping off my apron, and walked directly into Ned Jones. "Ho," he said with a smile. "Easy there, Tiger. You'll knock somebody over walking that fast." "Sorry," I replied. "Off to go train?" He shouldered his gym bag. "Yeah, got the big fight coming up, and I can't let anything distract me. You know how bad it would be to lose against Hank Schilling?" "How bad?" I asked. Ned laughed. "Real bad. Nobody would take me seriously. It's an exhibition match, but it matters. The guy's on top of the world. It's about time somebody takes him down a peg or two." "You two know each other well?" "I wouldn't say well. When we were kids, we trained in the same gym, had the same coach, but we didn't hang out, he said, shrugging his muscular shoulders. The man was as striking as he'd been at the Valentine's Day bash, and he was the opposite of Hank Schilling. Where Hank was tall, he was short and lean. Where Hank had flowing black hair, he had shaved it all off. "Well, I'll see you around," Ned said, with a two-finger salute to his brow and a grin. "Wait a second, Ned." I caught his forearm. He looked down at my hand and I released him. "Sorry," I said, with a faux shy giggle. "That's all right, sweetheart. Touch away." "Gross. I just wanted to check if you're okay," I said. "I mean, given what happened last night, I know that's been disturbing for the other guests." He sighed. "Yeah, it's not ideal. This inn is beautiful, but it was kind of ruined by what happened last night." "Yeah." "Did you hear it was the chocolates?" "The chocolates?" "Apparently they were poisoned." "That's crazy," he said. "You know, I saw them get delivered." "You did?" "I think so. I saw a box of chocolates get delivered, but maybe it was a different one," he said, and scratched his forehead. "Velvet box shaped like a heart. It had a little white card with it." "It had a white card?" "Yeah," he said. "Interesting. Who delivered the chocolates?" "I didn't see the guy's face. He was wearing a hoodie." "Oh," I said. Ned shrugged. "Anyway, sweetheart, unless you've got other questions?" "No," I said. "That's all." "As long as you're okay, I'm checking in on the guests to make sure they—" Ned reached into his gym bag and extracted a white card. He handed it over. "This is my number. You have any other questions, you just give me a call, all right?" And then he sauntered off, likely thinking he was a gift to all the women on planet Earth. I pocketed the card. It was good to keep it for Gamma's records. She loved to have an up-to-date database of. "You can't be serious." Kaylee Ortega, Hank's girlfriend, stood at the base of the stairs. "You're going to just hit on the guests?" I wasn't hitting on. "Sure," she said, "sure," and gave a laugh. "I kind of expected more of you after what my mother said, but I guess I expected too much." She blew past me and out of the indoors. What was with everyone today? Too much tension in the air, and I was not here for it. I hurried upstairs to collect my laptop and review the footage. If I could connect what Ned had just told me with physical evidence, it would be a start. I'd be able to figure out who might have delivered the chocolates and why. I sent off another text to Gamma. "White card on the chocolates, according to a witness. Footage on your laptop." Chapter 8. The camera footage fascinated me. Ned had been correct. A man in a hoodie walked up the front steps and entered the inn. From there, the camera angle picked up his movements around the entry hall. He hadn't lingered, but had put down the chocolates and headed right back out the front doors and down the path. On foot. Had there been a van parked out front? No, the man had walked down the long road into town until he was out of sight. Who was he? Average height and build, if not a little overweight, but that didn't mean anything. People could easily disguise their appearance with padding or extra clothing. Who was he? Where had he come from? And why? A knock rattled my door, and it opened to admit Delta. Admit wasn't the right word. It wasn't like I'd asked her to come in, but she'd decided that she was going to come in, no matter what I wanted. "Jerry," I said, "what a pleasure to see you again." Delta rolled her eyes. "Do you have any information on what's going on?" "The police have asked me to come down and talk to them a second time." "What are you going to say?" "Exactly what happened, minus the part about me talking to Mickey about my past." Delta ran her fingers through her short hair. "What would you do?" "Tell them as much as I could and the rest." "Well, it is what it is." Delta plopped down on the stool in front of my dressing table and stared out of the windows that overlooked the tree line at the back of the inn, her green eyes wide. "I can't believe this has happened to Mickey." "Haim, that's the peril with being who we are," I said, studying the footage. It was interesting that I couldn't see the card on the box of chocolates. Was it the ankle? I caught sight of it tucked into the ribbon that encased the side of the box. As the man with the hoodie entered the inn, he set it down, but in a way that the card itself was out of sight. So there had been a note. But where had it gone? It was tucked into the ribbon, but had it dropped out at some point? I forwarded through the footage, but nothing of note happened. People coming and going, walking past the box. I skipped through to the footage from the day of the Valentine's Day bash. Mickey approached the box, checking left and right, and then took it and headed upstairs. So, he had removed the box after all. But who had removed the card? The card was the key to figuring out who the box had been intended for. I'd have to ask Gamma to review the footage at length. She was more thorough and preferred to do this kind of work herself, especially since it was her inn and her camera footage. I sent off a quick text with what I'd found. "How can you say that?" Delta asked. "Huh?" I looked up and met her gaze. "Sorry, what did you say?" "How can you just sit there and say that? That it's part of the job for us to lose people we love?" "It is part of the job, Jerry," I said. "Surely you knew that when you signed up. That's what makes having a romantic partner so difficult. Even selfish at times." I wasn't selfish. I tried to tell him. "But not at the start," I said. "And you've told your precious detective who you are?" she asked. I wet my lips. "No." "So, then." "Hey, I didn't say I wasn't selfish, but I did tell him that he should stay away from me, that it would be dangerous." "Because that always works when pushing inquisitive people away," Delta said. "That's practically a green flag for them." "Is there a reason you came up here, other than to argue with me? Because it's not going to achieve anything, US fighting." Delta's glare shifted to the window, and she did a double take. "What?" "There's a guy in a hoodie climbing a tree out there." I shut the laptop and got up, moving to the window. Delta rose and stood next to me. She was right. A man in a hoodie swung from the branch of a tree in the backyard, face obscured, and it was a similar gray hoodie as the man who'd delivered the chocolates. "Ah, that's lucky." "What are you?" I opened my bedroom window and slipped out onto the roof before she could finish her sentence. I leaped onto the overhang above the kitten foster center, ran along it, then grabbed the edge of the roof and let myself down. I landed, dusting off my hands, and sprinted toward the trees. The gray hoodie guy dropped out of his tree, turned and ran through the forest. "Hey you, stop right there!" But the guy didn't listen. He set a furious pace, sprinting through the trees, darting left and then right. Perfectly evasive, and much faster than me. I pumped my hands back and forth, dodging rocky outcroppings and the occasional root. "Slow down." But my commands were pretty much useless. And then, to add insult to injury, Delta sprinted past me. "Darn it," I grunted. I should have cut back on the cupcakes. Delta caught up to the man in record timing. What was she, an Olympian or something? She tackled him to the ground and rolled him over, pressing a knee to his solar plexus. I caught up with them and pressed my hands to my knees, out of breath and sweaty. "What the heck? Let go of me? What are you doing?" Hank Schilling, the boxer, squirmed under Delta's knee. He reached up and yanked a pair of earphones out of his ears. "Are you insane?" Delta lifted her knee off his chest. "Hank?" I breathed. "What are you doing out here?" He scrambled up, shoving his hood back with one hand, trying to train for my boxing match. "What the heck are you two doing?" "We thought you were." I trailed off. "Sorry," Delta said. "We've been a little on edge ever since the murder. When we saw you running out here, we thought you seemed suspicious. It was the truth without admitting anything real. A fine line to walk." "Oh," Hank said. "Oh, okay, what are you? The watchdogs of the inn or something?" "I work here," I said, "and Jerry is my friend." The word friend came out from between gritted teeth. "Sure." "Okay," Hank nodded, but but I could tell he didn't buy it. He got up and jogged off, glancing over his shoulder at us and shaking his head. "Carry on," Delta said, then grabbed me by the arm and walked me back toward the inn. What kind of stunt was that? Stunt? If I hadn't done something, he would have gotten away. And he might be the guy who delivered the chocolates. He's officially on the list. And you couldn't think of a less obvious way to bring him down? Other than, scaling the side of the inn, running through the forest and tackling him. "May I point out that you were the one who tackled him?" I asked. "Seriously? How are you judging me right now? What would you have done? Just let him go?" "Yes, and used Georgina's cameras to track him down." I hated that she was right. "And then quietly built more information about him," she said. "Oh, well, since you're the expert, you don't need my help after all." "That's not what I'm saying, Charlie. There are more subtle ways to." "Subtle?" "Your cover is already blown, Delta," I hissed, under my breath. She recoiled at the use of her real name. "Forgive me for trying to do the right thing and help you get out of a sticky situation." "Charlie." "Gay?" I walked off. She was right. I could have been more subtle, but my desperation to solve the case, and in a weird way, to help her, had made it impossible to study things from afar. That wasn't my style. Back in my room, I took a quick shower, then sat down on the edge of the bed, toweling my hair. I had 2 missed calls from Aaron. I didn't call him back. Chapter 9. Delta's words stung because she was right. And I didn't particularly enjoy it when she was right. I spent the afternoon helping clean up around the inn, assisting with the lunch service for the guests, and trying to keep my hands occupied so that my mind could work. After lunch, I dipped into the kitten foster center and was greeted by excitable meows and purrs from the cats and kittens. The youngest kittens were cared for in a room full of incubators. Gamma paid her assistants well, especially since they usually had to spend the night to look after the kittens, but it was worth it. These cats would have never stood a chance if not for her. Everybody needed help at some point in their lives, and cats weren't an exception to that rule. I sat down in the center of the room, smiling as one of the kittens tumbled into my lap, meowing at me in half-indignation. "Hungry?" I asked. "They've just been fed," Becky called from the door to the incubation room. She gave a soft smile. "You know how they are. Full for 5 seconds and always looking for their next meal." I laughed. "Sounds like you and I have something in common," I said to the adorable calico kitten in my lap. I stroked its head, and it purred and patted my wrist. Finally, it moved off to go play, and I leaned my hands on the hardwood floor behind me, stretching out my legs. What was it about Delta in this case that got under my skin? Sure, we were competitors, but were we really? Delta was still active. She was still a part of the NSIB, and she was following in Gamma's footsteps. From what Gamma had told me, she was fantastic at what she did. Not like me. Not a loose cannon who was willing to scale walls in broad daylight to get what I wanted. She wasn't impulsive. She had that part of herself under control, unless you counted the candy bars and stress eating. The door to the kitten foster center opened and closed behind me. Heels clicked on the floor, and I turned my head. Kaylee Ortega folded her arms and stared at me, her caramel brown locks falling in perfect waves around her shoulders. "Can I talk to you for a second?" "Do you need help with something?" I asked, rising and dusting myself off. "I need help understanding why you're bothering my man," she said. What?" "Hank," she said. "He told me about what happened this morning. Care to explain?" "Darn. Actually, you don't need to explain because I know exactly what you were doing." "You do?" "Yeah, I do." And then she dug her sharp fingernails into my arm and walked me toward the back of the kitten foster center. I considered incapacitating her, or at least throat-punching her for her blustery attitude, but resisted. What would Delta think, and why did I care? I allowed Kaylee to feed me out of the back doors of the inn and onto the porch. Potted plants hung from the eaves, the soft breeze disturbing them. Texas was never that cold. but there was a sharp nip to the air, a reminder that spring had yet to arrive. "You," she said, "are going to stay away from my boyfriend, do you understand?" "What exactly do you think I did?" You interrogated him. "Did he tell you why?" "Because you thought he was a criminal or something," she said. "But I don't buy it." Kaylee paced on the porch in front of me, pausing now and again to catch my gaze and hold it. "I've put up with enough women like you since I started dating him. All you want is attention." "I can assure you that's not the case." "You can shove your assurances where the sun doesn't shine," Kaylee said. "Let me make it really clear to you. I won't put up with another woman interfering in my relationship. Never again. Not after the last time." I opened my mouth to ask. "No," she said. "I don't want to hear it. You like Hank. Everybody likes Hank. He's a fantastic person. And he's gorgeous and strong, and he works hard, and he's kind to people. So, I get it, but that doesn't excuse your behavior or mean that I'm going to let you snatch him away from me. Do you understand?" "Kaylee, I had no intention of snatching him away. You know what I am. A fixer. I helped your mother, remember?" "I don't care." "I'm trying to get to the bottom of what happened at the inn," I said. "I don't like your boyfriend. I have one of my own. For now. Assuming he didn't pry too much into my life. Because if he did, he'd wind up like Mickey, or we'd break up before that happened. I couldn't let him get hurt." Kaylee drew in close and poked me in the chest. "Just stay away from my man." And then she stormed off the back porch and disappeared around the side of the inn. "Duly noted," I murmured. But in the sense that her actions intrigued me. There was one thing we hadn't considered yet in our investigation. Technically, I'd touched on it when I'd wondered where the card had gone. I whipped out my phone and sent off a message to my grandmother. Who were the chocolates meant for? That's part of what I'm working on, but it's very difficult to find the answer without the card. Those chocolates were meant for someone at the inn. What if they were meant for one of the other guests? Like Hank, for instance, or even Kaylee. I couldn't assume too much, but was it a far stretch given that it had been Valentine's Day? And we'd been hosting a bash. But then the chocolates might have been meant for any of the guests, and that made finding the card even more important. I re-entered the kitten foster center and shut the door hurriedly behind me so that the kitties wouldn't make a bid for escape. A text blipped on my phone. Several people took a look at that chocolate box, but I can't pinpoint the one who took the card. I can give you a list of those who stopped beside the box to check it out, but it's a long list. A list might be our only answer. Sending through in a moment. I strode past the now empty kitchen and toward the library, my favorite spot to relax when I needed to think. Another text message came through on my phone, and I lifted it to read the list. A figure on the porch distracted me. Aaron stepped through the open front doors and into the entry hall. He gave me a soft smile. "Charlie, we need to talk." "What now?" Chapter 10. I followed Aaron out into the inn's front yard, and we walked under the trees together, him with his hands in the pockets of his leather jacket, and me clutching my phone. The text message was burning a hole in my mind. The list would help us narrow down the suspects and ultimately get both Aaron and the cops and everyone in this town off our backs. It would also mean Delta would leave. My stomach twisted at the thought. "No way. You don't actually like her." But my gaze wandered to the lurid food truck out front. Her cover was blown. She had to leave, right? But it begged the question, what did they know about her? Just her name? Where she worked? That she was here? Charlie? Carly. I blinked, then stowed my phone in my pocket. "Sorry, Aaron. I was lost in thought." "You don't say." "What did you want to talk about?" "Us," he said. "You." "Me." "Aaron, I'm going to stop you right there. There's nothing about me that's special or different. I'm just A." "Don't do that," he said. "What?" "Act like you're not important," he said. "To me or to whatever organization you work for." It was too close to home. I started walking because, darn it, my stomach was in knots. How did he know? It was one thing to figure out my cover only went so deep, but organization. Charlotte, wait. Aaron jogged after me. Charlie. Stop, just stop. He grabbed my arm. No, I said. No, you stop. Stop invading my privacy. Your privacy? That's right, I said. You didn't even apologize for what you did. Apologize for what? Doing a background check on me. How lame is that? You didn't trust me, so you decided the best way to start off our relationship was to go ahead and look me up to figure out if you could. Not talk to me. Not ask me. What would talking to you have achieved? Aaron asked. You would have denied everything. You would have given me that same line about you being dangerous, and me not asking questions. What the heck did you expect, Charlie? I'm a detective. That's what I do. I detect things. I hope you can detect that I don't want to talk to you. I started walking. I know. No. That stopped me in my tracks. You know what? There are many things you could know, Aaron. Apparently not knowing when to shut up isn't one of them. Wow. I released a breath. Sorry, I shouldn't have. It's not right to talk like that, but you're frustrating me and I need space. Charlie, I know that Jerry's involved somehow. Involved in what? I asked. The murder? Because you're going to have to prove that with real evidence, not random hunches. First, you don't think that her standing over the victim holding poisoned chocolates is evidence? Aaron. And second, I'm not talking about the murder, he said, and came closer. Clouds had gathered in the sky, marring the sunny day and my mood. She's the same as you? He said. The same as me how? I asked. She's a woman who works on an ice cream truck. Yeah, and she doesn't have a real history. Similar thing to you, it goes skin deep. Any amount of advanced digging would. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Do you think I can help you? Tell you whatever it is that you want to know? No, I don't think that, he breathed. I think I'm too close to the truth and you don't like it? True. Dune? And I think that if I keep digging it might ruin our relationship, he said. That hurt. Why? I asked. Because you've broken my trust. Or because you've broken mine, he said. Who are you? Who are you really? Don't you think you owe me that much? Impossible. I am not impossible for wanting the truth. No, not you. This relationship. Us. I need space. I need time to think, I said, and walked off a few steps, then stopped and turned back to him. He was handsome, his dark hair rustled by the breeze, his jawline strong and covered in stubble. Tall and bad news, and wearing that leather jacket. I warned you, Aaron, I said. I told you that it wouldn't work, but you wanted to take me out on a date. You wanted to make this work. You said you liked danger. He didn't have an answer for me. His eyes gave away nothing. Whatever. Charlie, he called out softly. What? You don't have much time, and neither does Jerry. Huh? It's not a threat, he said, so don't take it that way, but the FBI are coming to gossip. They'll be here in a couple of days, so if you want to figure this out before then, I suggest you do. Because there's going to be a lot of media attention on this town soon. A lot. My worst nightmare come true, Gamma's as well. This could ruin everything. I shouldn't even be telling you this, he said. Then don't. Don't tell me anything. Don't do me any favors, Aaron. If you would tell me. Goodbye, Aaron. And then I walked off, leaving him there. I marched past the side of the inn, the greenhouse, down the crunchy gravel path and toward the kitten foster center, but I didn't go inside. Instead, I sat down on the top step, my palms cupping my chin, and took several deep, calming breaths. Aaron had every right to be curious. I had every right to protect my privacy. But that didn't change the fact that we couldn't be together. This was more proof that we weren't compatible. I took my phone out of the pocket of my jeans and read the list from my grandmother. Felicia Whitmore, Danny Nye, Kaylee Ortega, Hank Schilling, Ned Jones, Jerry, Mickey, Charlotte Smith, Georgina Franklin. The last two were for posterity. My grandmother was the type who did her tasks thoroughly. Charlotte, report to the armory immediately. Bring Jerry. I read the text and reread it. If she wanted us to meet with her, then she had to be onto something. My heart leaped. The fact that the FBI were interested in the case was a problem, and it begged the question, why? But Gamma had a lead. And that was all the hope I needed? Chapter 11. Why would the FBI get involved, for heaven's sake? Gamma asked, swiveling back and forth on the stool in front of her touchscreen desk in the secret armory. I folded my arms and considered it, while Delta, who'd only been down here a few times since she'd arrived, wandered between the shelves and checked things out. She lifted a small cylindrical object off the shelf. Is this? Sleep bomb, Gamma confirmed. That's illegal. There was a hint of approval in Delta's tone. You must have great contacts. Gamma flashed her a grin, and I tamped down on my silly envy. This moment wasn't about my complex relationship with my grandmother or my long-lost cousin. There was trouble on the horizon, big trouble, and we were all under threat. Nothing mattered more to me than family, and while I kind of begrudged Delta's presence here, she was still family. Family who needed help. And after spending time with her, I shook my head. The FBI, I said, drawing my grandmother's attention from her touchpad desk, is most likely here because of the amount of murders in the area. That, or they're here because Good alerted them to the fact that I don't have a real history, and they think something's up. Gamma arched an eyebrow. Men, while delicious, are trouble. That's a tad cannibalistic, Georgina, Delta said, as she picked up another object. A pen. She clicked it, and a low buzz ran through the room and started building. She clicked it again. Sonic incapacitator. Impressive. Would you stop messing around with all that stuff? I asked. We're trying to figure this out. Let her have some fun, Charlotte, Gamma said. She's not going to be around for much longer. I hope that doesn't tie in with the cannibalistic comment from earlier, Delta muttered. I sighed. Either way, we have to figure this out fast. Aaron told me agents will be here within a few days. He didn't give me an exact timeline. Why not? Because I told him I needed a break. Oof. Are you okay? Delta asked, pulling a face. I'm sorry. Really, Charlotte? You couldn't have pressed him for more information before you abandoned the relationship? Gamma asked. That's Machiavellian of you, Georgina. We're spies, she said, tapping on the screen. That is, essentially, the point. And then she turned those sharp blue eyes on me. Are you all right? I've been better, I admitted, and cleared my throat. But that's not the issue. The card. Someone removed the card, and the card is our only real clue about who was intended to eat those chocolates. There wasn't a card on the box when I checked it out, or when Mickey had it upstairs, Delta said, pain flashing across her features. She'd really liked the guy, loved him even, and he was gone. I stepped toward her too. What? Pat her on the arm? Hug her? Would she even accept that affection from me? Let me see. Gamma pulled up footage from the inn's front hall and forwarded through it. That only rules out one other suspect. Danny Nye. He looked at the box after you, so anyone before you might have taken in. We can assume it wasn't Mickey. He would have had no reason to take the card. We'll have to investigate their rooms, I said. Delta's eyes widened. You're going to go through their things? We're spies, I said, echoing Gamma's words from earlier. And then I bit down on the corner of my lip. So wait, what did you call us down here for, Georgina? She tapped and pulled up an image on the screen. "This," she said, "is the Cherry Lane chocolate shop." It was a cute little establishment with a pink fluttering overhang out front, a glass front door, and clear displays in the windows that contained countless treats. "My research indicates that the chocolates had to have come from there. It's a specialty store, newly established, and this is the owner." She tapped the screen. "Patricia Whitmore." "Any relation to Felicia?" I asked. "Interesting you mention that. They're sisters," Gamma replied, tapping away and bringing up another image. This one showed two elderly sisters, arm in arm. They both wore aprons and were outside the front of the chocolate shop. "But wait," I said. "If they both own the shop, then why is Felicia staying at the inn and not somewhere in town?" "Turns out they're not co-owners of the store anymore. There's been a power shift," Gamma said. "And that power shift included Felicia being kicked out of the business. All things we'll have to ask Patricia about." "I'll go," I said, instantly. "I need to think." "I'll come with you," Delta said. I rolled my eyes heavenward, headed to the shelves, and grabbed a few devices that might come in handy. Gamma nodded. "Good. I love to see you two working together." "This is the place," Delta said, ruffling her hair and narrowing those green eyes to take in the building. The chocolate shop was adorable, but the cute setting along one of Gossip's wide paved roads didn't give me any peace. Not after my argument with Aaron or the urgency of how we had to solve this case to save Delta, the inn, and my grandmother. "Here's what we're going to do," Delta said, then stopped at the expression on my face. "What?" "Really?" I asked. "You think you're taking point on this one?" "Given that my fate hangs in the balance, heck yeah, I'm going to take point." Delta got out of the car. I joined her, and I hated to admit it, but she was sure of herself at least. "Let me do the talking," I said, catching up to her. Delta arched an eyebrow at me. "Really?" "I was thinking more like we play to our strengths. I'll talk, you investigate." "Investigate how?" "That's up to you," Delta said. She opened the door to the chocolate shop, and a cute chime played inside the store. The rich scent of chocolate instantly filled my nose, and my mouth watered. I hadn't eaten anything at lunch, and I hadn't exactly been hungry after my talk with Aaron. "Hello." The sing-song voice came from a woman with her hair in gray curls, wearing lipstick that had smudged onto her teeth. "Welcome to the Cherry Lane chocolate shop. How may I help you today?" I smiled and wandered through the aisles. "I'm starving," Delta said, "and I have to admit, I've got a bit of a chocolate addiction." She gave a self-deprecatory laugh. "Don't we all?" Patricia said. "What can I get for you this morning?" "I'd love anything with coconut," Delta said. "Coconut is my favorite flavor, but my sister hates it." "Oh, you two are sisters?" Patricia's smile faltered. "We are," Delta said. "Charlie's not a chocolate person, though." "No? That's a shame." "That reminds me of my sister," Patricia said. "Also not a fan of chocolate. She wouldn't touch the stuff if you paid her." Then surely the chocolates couldn't have been for Felicia. The killer would have known that she wasn't going to eat them and would have used a different method. "I don't get it," Delta said. "How can you not like chocolate?" "I'm right there with you. May I recommend the coconut drops?" "Those sound delicious," Delta said, running her fingertips over the top of the glass counter. I walked down an aisle and spotted a row of boxes to one side. I cleared my throat and drew Delta's attention to them. "Oh, those are adorable," she said. "Are those velvet boxes?" "They are," Patricia said, with a broad smile. "We got them in stock for Valentine's Day. They sold like crazy. It's just a pity I wasn't here to help with fulfillment." "Why? I bet you had loads of customers." "Too many," Patricia replied. "My poor shop assistant struggled to fulfill them all." "Who is she?" I asked. Delta shot me a look, gave a slight shake of her head. But if Patricia was unnerved by my harsh question, she didn't show it as she loaded up a box with chocolates. "Sue Poole," she said. "You know the dear, surely. She lives in the trailer park on Cotton Lane." She was exhausted after Valentine's Day, and I don't blame her. She handed over the chocolates. "There you go. Have a nice day." Thanks, Patricia. Nice to meet you. And you too. Delta and I got into my green Mini Cooper, and I started the engine without saying a word. Chapter 12. The ride to the trailer park took place in deathly quiet. I was in my head about the case, Aaron, and my feelings around my family. If the chocolates had been delivered to the inn with the purpose of claiming one of the inn's guests as a victim, then all we had to do was find that card. Once we had the identity of the true victim, we could work our way backward to the murderer. I parked the Mini Cooper outside the entrance to the trailer park. It was down a long lane, ensconced between trees and foliage, and brought out my phone. "What are you doing?" "Texting Georgina," I said. "The sooner we figure out where that card is, the better." Darn it, I should have put on my microphone to keep in touch with her. But I'd been so focused on dealing with this problem that I hadn't. Delta sat back in her seat, staring out the windshield at the trailer park. "Can't believe this is happening?" "Huh?" I looked up from my phone. "I can't believe Mickey died for this," she whispered. "The chocolates probably weren't for him. He took them and ate them, and it was all for nothing. It was because he wanted chocolates. Because I stressed him out." "This is not your fault," I said, slipping my phone into my purse. "Look, Delta, we might not get along a lot of the time, but you can't seriously believe that. You didn't poison those chocolates. The only person responsible for this is the murderer. And we're going to find them." Delta sucked in a breath and nodded. "Thanks, Charlie." I got out of the car and we headed into the trailer park, following the streets until we found Cotton Lane. Thankfully, there were only 2 trailers parked along it. One with wheels, outfitted in fancy chrome, its door open and the sounds of cooking traveling from within. The other trailer was planted firmly on the ground, a discolored yellow, the curtains drawn over grimy windows. "Excuse me," I called. A woman popped her head out the door of her trailer, holding a spatula. "I help you, honey?" "Hi," Delta said, putting up a bright smile. "We're looking for Sue?" "That old thing? Don't know why you'd be looking for the likes of her. Nothing but trouble if you ask me." But she pointed her spatula toward the worn-down trailer opposite. I shrugged and hopped up the small steps that led to the trailer door. I banged on it, and it drifted open. A woman lay on the floor, a box of chocolates beside her, the contents spilling out. Sue Poole was dead, staring at the ceiling unseeingly. "Jerry," I said over my shoulder. "See." My cousin peered past me. Another dead end. "That's both horrifying and ironic," I said, shouldering my purse. "Run." "What?" "Run. In about 5 minutes, I'm going to start screaming for the cops. You need to get out of here before that happens." "Charlie." I turned toward her. "They think you did it. They're going to think the same thing now. Get out of here. Get back to the inn. Tell Lauren that you need an alibi. She'll give you one. Just go, all right? You were never here." "But the woman next door." "I'll deal with her." Delta hesitated, but she turned on her heel and ran for it. I reached into my purse and removed the pen I'd taken from Gamma's stash in the armory. It was one of my favorite toys, even though it was incredibly expensive to replace. But then, that was the case for most of Gamma's things. Quickly, I marched across to the neighbor's trailer, then clattered up the stairs and entered it. The woman looked up from the stove, spatula dripping oil. "What the?" 2 steps brought me into her space. I brought up the pen and aimed it at her, then clicked. A low-pitched whine burst through the space, and she gasped and stumbled. "You saw me arrive at Sue's trailer on my own. I asked you where she stayed. You have no recollection of me entering your trailer. Repeat it." "I saw you arrive at Sue's trailer on your own. You asked me where she stayed. I have no recollection of you entering my trailer." Good. She was still dazed, so I took my opportunity. "When last did you see Sue?" "Last night," she answered mechanically, rubbing her eyes with one hand. "She came home with a box of chocolates. She offered me one. I said no." "She was alone?" "Yes. Hey, what the heck are you?" I released another burst from the pen and erased her memory again, making her repeat after me, and then I left. The trick with pen was that it dazed the subject. It wasn't the same as a truth serum, which was much more effective. This option was marginally cheaper but weaker. I headed over to Sue's trailer, tucking the pen back into my purse, then counted to 5 under my breath. "Help! Help! There's a dead body," I howled. "Somebody call 911." "Charlie," Aaron said. "Charlie, this is the second murder this week." "I'm aware, Aaron. And the second time that you found the body." On the bright side, I said, from where I stood at the mouth to Cotton Lane, watching as the police cordoned off the area and set to work, I didn't find anyone standing over the body. "Hey, wait a minute, doesn't this clear Jerry?" Aaron tilted his head. Darn it, I'd been too eager. This was exactly why Delta was a better spy than me. She wouldn't have made this type of mistake. "I have to interview everyone first before I make that type of deduction," he said, "given what I know about you and Jerry." "And what's that, Aaron? What is it you know?" I asked. His expression darkened, and I hated that he was handsome when he scowled. "I'm not at liberty to say." I let out a breath and tried to calm myself. "Look, just do what you do best. I've told you everything I know, so I'll head back to the inn, not leave town, that kind of thing." "It's not you that doesn't have to leave town," Aaron said. "You can't be—" I stopped myself. "Whatever. Can I go? I've told you everything I saw." "You were at the scene of a crime." "No, you can't go yet." My phone trilled in my purse. "Do you mind if I take this?" "Go ahead." Aaron walked off and I glared at his back before I answered the call. "Go for Charlie." "You need to get back here now," Gamma hissed down the line. "What's wrong?" "The police are here. They have a warrant for Delta's arrest." "I've hidden her in the basement," Gamma whispered. "I need you here." "I'm on my way." I hung up. Aaron was distracted, and if he wanted to talk to me, he could find me at the inn. I walked off before he could stop me, my heart pounding. Chapter 13. The trailer park wasn't too far from the inn, thankfully. Delta had walked home, but I took the Mini Cooper, driving so fast that I spit up dust on the dirt road that led up to the inn's gates. I parked out front and found 2 cop cars, a crowd of people, and Gamma standing on the porch, wearing a smile as sugary as sweet tea. I leaped out of the Mini and took the porch steps 2 at a time. "Georgina," I said, "what's going on?" "These officers are here looking for one of the guests, Charlotte," she said. "A woman by the name of Jerry. She owns that food truck over there. You haven't seen her by chance?" "Seen her?" "No, not since breakfast this morning," I said. The officer perked up. I didn't recognize him, but he had a mean set to his mouth and a square head. "You ain't seen her since then?" "No, sir," I said. He made a note of it. A bad thing, given that I'd gotten into the car with her this afternoon. But Gamma would erase those security recordings if necessary, and she wouldn't tell the police about them or offer them up without a warrant. "Is there anything I can do to help, Georgina?" My grandmother's sharp gaze flickered left, and I followed it. Kaylee and her boyfriend, Hank, sat on our favorite bench under the old oak tree, deep in conversation. "No, dear, just help Lauren if she needs it." Gamma fished her master set of keys out of the front pocket of her apron and handed it to me. She mentioned needing access to the kitten foster center. "You know which key it is." I was about to help her when these fine gentlemen arrived. "Sure." I gave her a smile, then entered the inn. I checked I was out of sight before hurrying up the stairs. On the first floor landing, Sunlight meowed at me from one of the many nooks. He stretched his ginger body, leaped off the chair, and hurried after me. "We've got to be stealthy. That means no cat hair in the rooms." A text blipped on my phone. Gamma. "Hurry, find what you need, get down to the place afterward." I sent her a thumbs-up emoji in response, then hightailed it up to the lavender room where Kaylee was staying. I'd check Hank's room after. The master keys clicked in my hand, and I rifled through them until I found the right one. In, I murmured. Stay there. Sunlight, by a miracle from the divine, stayed outside the room. I have to be quick. I moved through the beautifully decorated lavender room, with its white four-poster bed, lavender accents, and throw rug, and opened the closets, the dresser drawers, and the bathroom, searching through them. Nothing, nothing, nothing. The bedside table was equally empty. Come on, so Kaylee wasn't the one who'd taken the card, which might rule her out as a suspect if I could find that simple piece of paper in another room. The key to everything. Sunlight's impetuous meow came from under the bed. Sunlight, no, but his furry tail disappeared. Sunlight, seriously? This was what I got for adopting a rambunctious ginger cat. I dropped down on all fours and reached for him, then stopped. A white card lay on the wooden floor. Sunlight, I whispered, grabbing the card. You genius. He meowed and purred, trotting out from under the bed, and I grabbed him in my arms, then retreated from the room, rapidly, shutting the door and then locking it. I tucked the keys into my purse and dropped Sunlight before heading downstairs, the card in hand. This was it. We had at least one answer to the question. On the first floor, I stopped near one of the guest bathrooms and checked the card, my pulse racing. For Hank. I can't stop thinking about you. Your secret admirer. My jaw dropped. Hank was the target. Hank Schilling? That changed everything. Hank. Gamma sat with her hands in her lap in the armory. She was composed now that the action was afoot. My cousin Delta paced, occasionally muttering under her breath or shaking her head. Hank was the intended victim? Gamma asked. And Kaylee, his girlfriend, removed the card, I said. I knew she was suspicious. I darn well knew it the minute she threatened me. It's amazing you chose not to tell anyone that, Charlotte. I told you, didn't I? I asked. No. Didn't tell me either, Delta said, raising a hand. Felons on the run don't get an opinion, I replied. I'm not a felon yet, she replied. They have to catch me first, and I'm more concerned about my cover being blown than the FBI or the cops. We were getting into the weeds. Look, I said, pointing at the card where it lay on the desk. There are a couple of options here. Either Kaylee was the killer and didn't want anyone to suspect her of murdering her boyfriend, or it was Ned Jones. Why him? Delta asked. He's in competition with Hank, I said. They've got that big fight in a couple of days. And then there's the fact that I saw Ned flirting with Kaylee at the Valentine's Day bash. Indicating that the pair might be in cahoots, Gamma said. Exactly. But so, what are we waiting for? Delta asked. Let's round the pair of EM up, knock their heads together, and get to work. I like your style, I said, but it's not that simple. We need to connect more dots first. We can't just knock them out and deliver them to the cops without evidence. We have to lead the lambs to the slaughter. I mean, surely there's a better turn of phrase? Delta asked. Kittens to the ball of yarn? I suggested. Way better. Gamma tapped on the touchpad on her desk. I have discovered something that will help, she said. I've done research on the poison used in the chocolates. I managed to scrape some of the chocolate off the carpet in the victim's room. Delta paled and sat down on the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. Pesticide, Gamma said. The cyanide was from a pesticide. I'm doing a search on the guests at the inn who might have connections to that particular industry, but I'll narrow down the search. That's great. I braced myself. We just have to weather the storm and keep Delta hidden until this blows over. Great, Delta said, in a morose tone. I'm going to find Kaylee and ask her a couple of questions, I said. I'll revert back with anything I find. And I'll sit here and sulk, Delta muttered. Gamma and I ignored her. Hurriedly, I applied the flesh-colored microphone to my throat and inserted an earpiece. I handed Delta the same. Gamma was already hooked up. Can you hear me? I asked quietly. Loud and clear, Gamma breathed. Copy, Delta said. And then I was out of the door and on my way. I wasn't going to let them arrest Delta or disturb the peace at the inn. Not now, not ever. Chapter 14. A quick check of the inn's exterior told me that Kaylee and Hank weren't under the tree anymore. I headed inside, my mind focused on the goal. Find Kaylee, confront her, and figure out what the heck was going on before it was too late. The cops were gone, thankfully, and Lauren was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared yet another delicious meal for the inn's guests. There were a couple of folks in the dining room, but none of them were Kaylee. She was so jealous. Was she, though? Was Kaylee jealous of Hank, or was she just pretending to be to throw me off the scent? That, or she just didn't want me to figure out what she was up to. I headed up to the lavender room and knocked on the door briskly. Cocoa Puff had set himself up on a chair down the hall, and he watched me through sleep, yellow eyes, completely unconcerned by my anxiety. Coco had seen it all: the arrest of my ex, deaths, investigations, people hiding in the walls. I knocked again and waited. The door to the blue room next to Kaylee's room opened, and Hank peered out at me. "Oh, hey, you're, Charlie," I said. "Have you seen Kaylee around?" "Sure, she went for a walk a little while ago. She should be back before dinner." "Darn." "Thanks," I said, then took a step down the hall. I hesitated, turning back toward Hank. "How are you?" I asked. "You and Kaylee? After, all the turmoil at the inn." "It's been interesting," Hank said, leaning one arm against the door jamb above his head. He affected a flirty grin. "But not as interesting as talking to you." Gross. And Tian? No wonder Kaylee was jealous. Was it possible that she'd been jealous enough to get rid of Hank? Entirely possible if he'd had an affair. "You ready for your big fight?" I asked. "I don't know about you, but I'm a believer in ghosts." That was a lie, so I'd be totally freaked out if I had to stay next door to a room where, that happened. "Nah, I don't buy into that kind of thing. And as for the fight," he said, and then laughed. "Yeah, Ned and I go way back, so I'm not too worried about it. I know him like the back of my hand." And Ned had expressed that he wanted to beat Hank badly. Could it be Ned then? But if he wanted to beat the other guy in a fight, he wouldn't get rid of him beforehand, would he? Because that would mean he didn't get the attention and accolades he desired. "Are you good?" Hank asked. "You were kind of staring off into space." "Oh, sorry, super tired today. It's been a rush, what with everything going on at the inn, and the fight coming up, and..." He sauntered out of his bedroom and stopped, tilting his head. "You coming to the fight?" "Probably. I wouldn't have a choice. If Hank was the target, then I didn't doubt that the killer would try again. They were still around, and 2 people were dead thanks to them." "Probably?" "That's a shame. I'd love for that to be a definitely." "Not to be weird, Hank, but aren't you dating Kaylee?" "Dating her?" Hank laughed. "Yeah, I guess you can say that." "You guess?" "Kaylee's a pretty chick, but yeah, we're not official." "Then why did she follow you here?" I asked. "Because that's what she does." "What do you mean?" "She follows me wherever I fight. She's been doing it for years now. At first I was kind of freaked by it, but then I figured, to heck with it. She's just a woman. She's harmless." Famous last words, buddy. "So, you're kind of dating your stalker?" "I wouldn't call her that. And it's not dating. We're just hanging out." "Does she see it that way?" "Come on now, honey, you're not going to get all self-righteous and judgmental on me, are you?" He pinched my chin. I stepped out of his reach. "Mr. Schilling," I said, "I hope you have a fantastic day. And, just watch your back, all right?" "Watch my what?" But I was already halfway toward the stairs. I ignored him and continued down into the inn. This was bad. This was real bad. If only Sue hadn't died. Or if that chocolate shop had cameras. "That's interesting," Gamma said in my ear. "What a sleaze," Delta put in. I tensed and then relaxed. I'd been so focused on my goal I'd completely forgotten that I was mic'd up. "Can you check if the chocolate shop has cameras?" I murmured. Already done, Gamma said. And that's a no. No cameras. And nothing in the street either. Whoever visited that shop wasn't spotted. The guy in the hoodie, Delta said. I have found something interesting, however, Gamma continued. That sleaze you just had a rather tense conversation with has a father who is the co-owner of a company that produced pesticides. My eyes widened. Co-owner? Correct. The other owner is none other than a Mr. Ned Jones I, the boxer's father. You're kidding. I hovered on the stairs. Then I should talk to Ned too. He's got a lot of reasons to want Hank gone. So you have 2 suspects, right? Delta asked. Correct, Gamma replied. I don't know where to find Ned, but Kaylee's left the building. But of course they'd already heard that. Most likely, Ned was training for his fight. It was tomorrow for Pete's sake. It was strange that Hank wasn't spending today training as well. The plot had thickened. I just wished I could make sense of it before things went sour. Chapter 15. The night of the fight had arrived, and with it, several text messages from Aaron. You can't ignore me forever. Watch me. Come on, Charlie, we need to talk. There's a warrant out for Jerry's arrest. You disappeared from the trailer park yesterday, and you haven't returned any of my calls. And I didn't plan on it until this was through. He'd crossed my boundaries, and I had lied to him. Those weren't exactly great portents for our relationship's future. Ready, Charlotte? Gamma asked, tapping the flesh-colored microphone on her throat. I mimicked her actions. Ready, I said. Give me frequent updates, would you? Delta asked. I'm dying of boredom down here. It's been a while since I've gone to a boxing match. You like boxing matches? I asked, softly, checking my reflection in the mirror. I'd put on a lavender silk cocktail dress for tonight. It wasn't my usual style jeans and shirts, but it was necessary. Gamma wore black velvet and looked stunning as always. Like boxing matches? Delta said through my earpiece. I used to participate in them. Nice, I muttered, then caught myself. No way. Was I actually starting to like my cousin? If we don't leave soon, we're going to be late, Gamma said, checking her watch. I helped my grandmother into her coat, put mine on, and then offered her my arm. We exited the inn onto its gorgeous wraparound porch. It was early evening, a chill in the air, but the night sounds creeping in. A beautiful night, with stars overhead, and a police car coming down the driveway. Not this again, I said. You've got to be kidding me. Now. What is it? Delta asked. Police car, Gamma breathed. Stay quiet and still down there. Not that the cops would even find the hidden entrance to the armory, or be able to get inside if they did. You know, we should just memory wipe everybody, Delta said. That would take a lot of memory wiping, I breathed. And I kind of used up all the charges on the device already. Darn it. The car parked, the door slammed, and Aaron got out. Darn it. I echoed Delta's phrasing. Aaron, we were just leaving. I know, he said, but we need to talk, Charlie, now. He still had on his lanyard that carried his ID, meaning that he was on duty. I had no choice but to talk to him. Fine, I said. Fine, let's talk inside. Do hurry, Charlotte. You did promise me a lift to the fight. I handed Gamma the keys to the Mini Cooper, and she went down to it and got into the passenger seat. I led Aaron inside, but this time I didn't enter the inn's quaint library. I stood in the hallway with my arms folded. You look beautiful this evening, Charlie, he said. Oh, he's cute, Delta breathed. I reached up and brushed a finger over the microphone, making it look like I was merely scratching an itch. Just because my cousin was growing on me didn't mean I was going to let her listen in on my private conversations. Thanks, I said. What do you want, Aaron? Just like that, huh? Well, you're not here to talk to me about our relationship, are you? Charlie. Because I'd expect you to respect the fact that I need a break, and that I don't want to talk right now. Not about that. I know. What? Aaron stepped closer, his leathery cologne invading my space. I know about you. You're going to have to be more specific. You sure you don't want to talk about this somewhere more private? He asked, his eyes shifting left. I have to go. I tried walking past him, but he caught my arm. Stop it. Aaron, let go of me. Just stop avoiding me. He leaned in and whispered in my ear. I know you're a spy working for the NSIB. I know this is a cover. I know you're not who you say you are, Charlie Mission. My blood ran cold. And then my emotions did too. I grabbed his hand and twisted, bending his fingers back and bringing him to his knees in the entry hall. Big mistake, I murmured. Big mistake. Charlie, stop, he said, a sweat breaking out on his face. Stop. I didn't stop. I pulled harder, forcing him to compensate and bend so that his fingers remained intact. And then I leaned in and whispered in his ear. Do you know what happened to the last man who threatened me? Charlie. He's never going to see the light of day again, I continued. And that can be you too, if you go too far with this. I suggest you forget everything you know. I'm not going to tell anyone, he said. But the full-scale panic had set in. Him knowing didn't just endanger me. It endangered the inn, Gamma, Lauren, and everyone I loved. It endangered him too. I stared into his eyes. Let me go, he said. I'm not going to tell anyone. I released him, and he slumped, breathing hard and massaging his fingers. Is this how you treat all your boyfriends? Why would you do this? I asked. I told you to respect my privacy. I told you that I didn't want to talk about it. I told you to trust me. You lied to me. I had to. I understand that, he said. Charlie, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to abandon you, either, or betray you. You've already betrayed my trust. I took a deep breath. I'm sorry for putting you on your knees, I panicked. Because the last man I had trusted fully had ended up trying to kill me. That's fine. I should have approached this differently. Yeah, me too. I should never have approached it at all, I said. But I was weak, and I wanted to be with you. I wanted to know you. And that was wrong of me. I'm sorry. I would have to discuss this with Gamma. See if we could get our hands on another device to wipe his memories. It would be expensive, but the alternative was relocating. Because no matter how much I wanted to trust him, I couldn't. You should leave, Aaron. I'm going to the fight. Don't bother. Hank is a no-show. They canceled it. Wait, what? Hank Schilling didn't show up. Aaron was on his feet now, working his fingers and checking their mobility. My insides twisted. If Hank hadn't shown up, there was a reason for it. And it probably wasn't a good one. I have to go, I said, and took a step toward the door. I stopped. If you tell anyone, Aaron. I won't. But if you do. I know, he said. I turned to leave. You know where she is, don't you? Aaron called out. Jerry? I froze mid-stride. If you know where she is, you need to tell me, he said. I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I didn't like those words. Charlie? It's over, Aaron. I'm sorry. I left him in the inn's hallway and went down to the Mini Cooper to tell my grandmother the truth. Our covers were fully blown, and we had to figure out a way to save the inn before my ex-boyfriend brought the FBI down us all. Chapter 16. Delta looped her arms around her knees and sat on the floor in the armory, peering up at me as I paced back and forth, occasionally tugging at my silk dress out of frustration. We have to do something, I said. Now, before it's too late. Gamma tapped away on her desk, occasionally pausing to scratch her chin or frown. Why are you so calm, Georgina? Aaron knows, he knows, and it's only a matter of time before he finds out about you. I'm less concerned about the fact that he knows rather than the how and why of the matter. What do you mean? Delta asked. The man is a small-town cop, Gamma said. It's implausible that he would have had the wherewithal to figure this out without outside help, or that he's done this if he's simply a cop. He said that the cover wasn't deep enough. He told you what you wanted to hear. My guess is that Mr. Good isn't who you think he is, that he's trying to flush you out for some reason, whether that's personal or professional. I opened my mouth to argue but closed it again. Why? The million-dollar question, Charlotte. Why? Why would a small-town cop dig around in your history? Because I told him I'm dangerous, I said. All right, but why would he cross those boundaries and continue to cross those boundaries and then tell you about it? I think there are a few facts missing from this equation. Does any of this matter right now? Delta asked. The guy knows who Charlie is. He might figure out who I am too, and Mickey's gone. I think the finding out who you are ship has sailed, I replied. Your cover is already blown. Focus. Gamma clicked her fingers at us. Focus, girls. We have a murderer on the loose and a fight that didn't take place because one of the competitors decided not to participate. That or he's gone missing, I murmured. He was the intended victim. Exactly, Gamma said, and that means she tapped on her desk. She's back. Who? Delta asked. Gamma pointed at her camera feed. Kaylee Ortega. The card thief? Charlotte? I'm on it. I tapped the microphone patch on my throat and hurried for the door. 5 minutes later, I was in the inn, hurrying toward Kaylee's bedroom door. I drummed my knuckles against the door, and Kaylee cried out within. Who's there? Right? Housekeeping, I called. The door opened, and Kaylee's eyes widened. What are you? I pushed my way into the bedroom, sending her stumbling backward, then kicked the door shut with my heel. What do you think you're doing? Where's Hank? I asked. I don't know, she said, and her bottom lip trembled. She crossed her arms over her chest, rumpling her pretty pink cocktail dress. I don't know. He was meant to show up and he wait. Why are you here? You can't just barge into my room and start asking me questions. What do you want? I want to know why you took the card off those chocolates, I said. Kaylee froze. I want to know what's really going on, Miss Ortega. I have no idea what you're talking about. Wrong answer, I said, advancing on her. Charlotte, cool your jets. That was Gamma in my ear. I'm kind of enjoying this, Delta whispered. She's having a moment. What do you mean, wrong answer? Kaylee asked. You better get out of here before I start screaming. Just tell me why you took the card off the chocolates, I said. Why should I? You're not a cop. You know what I am, Kaylee, I said, trying to cool my jets as Gamma had suggested. I'm a fixer, and Ned Jones hired me to figure out what's really going on here. Ned? Why would Ned do that? Kaylee's gaze flickered left and then to my face. No, he wouldn't do that. Why not? Why does that surprise you? Something's fishy, Delta said in my ear. He just wouldn't. He would have no reason to do that, Kaylee said. He did. He would have told me, Kaylee said. Why? You're not his girlfriend, are you, Kaylee? I asked. She pressed her full lips together. He just wouldn't. Why did you take the card? I asked. Ned wants to know, lie or not. This thread of questioning was making her uncomfortable, and that was a good place to put a suspect. Kaylee turned her back on me. He's still my boyfriend. I just wanted to make sure that he didn't get those chocolates. Why? Because I'm tired of it. Kaylee spun back around, fire in her eyes. I am so darn tired of having to compete for Hank's attention. He can have any woman he wants, and he never treats me like I matter. But you followed him here, didn't you? He told you that? Yes. He told you that I followed him here? Kaylee asked. Hank told me that you were his stalker, I replied. The insinuation being that he didn't want to be with you, but he was doing you a favor by letting you tag along. Her eyes filled with tears. He wouldn't. He did. It's not true, she said. I would never do something like that. I'm not a stalker. He asked me to marry him. I can't handle always being in his shadow and having to deal with the way he acts around other women. I'm sorry, I said. That's what he told me. Her bottom lip trembled. Kaylee pushed past me and ran out of the room and clattered down the hall. What do you think that's about? I asked. Going to find Hank? Interesting what she said about Ned, Gamma said. Seems like she's attached to both of these men in some way. But she didn't want him to receive the chocolates, Delta said. That has to mean she didn't want Hank dead, especially since she had no idea that he was talking badly about her behind his back. She said she was tired of living in his shadow, I breathed. That brought a couple of minutes of silence. I scanned the room. See what you can find in her bedroom, Charlotte, Gamma said. There might be more to this, and we need you to figure out what that more might be. I'd searched this room for the card, but my gaze landed on the sleek black shape on the bed. She left her phone here. Perfect. Try to get it open. I lifted it off the bed and swept my thumb over the screen. Locked. I can hack it, Delta whispered. I have a special program that can hack it. Delta, you can't. Georgina, you can't keep me down here forever. This might help us put a stop to everything. She's right, I said, staring at the black screen. We need to know what's on this phone. A beat. And then. Fine, Gamma sighed, but make it quick. Chapter 17. Delta entered the room on a whisper of steps. She was so quiet, I jumped when I found her standing in the doorway, and then colored at having been taken unaware. Darn it, but she was good, and even I had to admit that. The phone. She crossed the wooden floors, the cute lavender accented throw rug, and stopped beside me, hand out. I gave it to her. Delta removed a phone from the pocket of her jeans and held it in her other hands, working on the screen with her thumb. A pattern flashed red, green, red, dots highlighting on Delta's phone, and as they did, she tapped out the same pattern on Kaylee's phone. A second later, it was unlocked. Wow, I said, just like that? Yeah, she grinned. I like technology. I designed this one myself, but it took a lot of years of research and development. It's a hacking app. That seems ridiculously dangerous. I'm the only one who has access to it, Delta said, and handed me back Kaylee's phone, and if anyone but me picks up this phone, it will self-destruct. The app? The entire phone, she replied, with a grin. Probably take the guy's hand off. Nice, I said. There was an awkward moment where our eyes met, we cleared our throat. It's lovely to see you two bonding, Gamma said, but I believe we were in the process of catching a cold-blooded murderer. I tapped on Kaylee's phone screen and navigated to her texts. Bingo, I said. There's a whole thread with Ned. Hey. Thread with Ned. I opened the text messages. Ned? You going to come down and see me later? I shouldn't. Ned, this is so wrong. It's not wrong to want to feel like somebody actually cares about you, honey. You know I care more than he ever will. He treats you like you don't mean anything. Ned, stop. I can't stop thinking about you. We shouldn't be doing this. It would be different if we'd never met. Who? Me and you? No, me and Hank. I'm in love with him. It's just difficult to deal with the fact that he doesn't love me back, not like I love him. So why the heck are you wasting your time with that loser? He's not a loser, he's just difficult, he proposed. That's a dollar store ring and you know it. He's just trying to keep you happy so that you won't leave. He loves control. Call me. No. No? We need to talk about this. You can't let him control you, Kaylee. I'm not letting anyone control me. Not him and not you. I told you I love him. This is so typical. It's typical that he would end up with you. I fell in love with you the first time I saw you at one of the fights, and of course you're his girl. But you're not actually his only girl. I hope you know that. I'm done talking. You're hurting my feelings. And that was it. Huh, I said. That's fascinating. It seems like we have some motive for Ned here. A lot of motive. He's been competing with Hank in more ways than one. Where is Hank? Delta asked. Where did he go? My grapevine has told me that Hank didn't show up for the fight, but Ned did, with a big smile on his face and a black eye.
What?
Delta and I said it in unison. Seems like he got into a fight before the event, but nobody knows who he might have fought with or why. I think I have an idea, however. Get down to the basement, quickly. I took a screenshot of the messages, sent it to my phone, then wiped down Kaylee's device and dropped it on her bed. Delta had already left, annoyingly quiet again, and I followed. We rendezvoused in the basement, the cool AI voice welcoming us by name as we entered the armory. I'm trying, Gamma said, as she tapped away on the screen, to use the cameras to pinpoint when he left. The hoodie? I whispered. The guy in the hoodie? It had to have been Ned. Kaylee and Ned are about the same height, Gamma remarked, hurriedly bringing that footage up to show us a holographic projection above the desk. Yes, but that's not it. Ned was the one who told me that a man in a hoodie had delivered the chocolates. But look around the entrance hall. Ned's not there, Delta breathed. So how would he know, unless he was the one delivering the chocolates? He delivered the chocolates, he killed Sue Poole when he thought the cops were on his tracks, and now he's done something to Hank, something that doesn't involve pesticide. And their parents owned the company together. The pesticide company, Delta said, clicking her fingers. That's where he got the poison. It had been entirely possible that Kaylee might have gotten the poison because of her connection to Hank, or that she'd been working with Ned. But with the new evidence from the text messages, that had to mean that Ned was the one who'd done this. He's taken him somewhere, I said. But where? Why would he have taken him away? And how did he overpower him? They're both pretty strong men, right? Correct, Gamma said, tapping and scanning. Ah, there. Hank left the inn at around 3 in the afternoon. Ned followed shortly after. Gamma brought it up on the screen. But where were they going? Where could they possibly have gone? To my eyes widened, and I looked over at Delta. You don't think? No, why would he do that? Delta asked. Where else would he have gone? There's nowhere to go where you can kill a person. Or hold a person hostage, I said. I can think of 50 places, Delta replied. Scary and a valid point, but for Ned, he doesn't have anywhere else to take him. It's the one place he knows is empty. Are you two going to fill me in on the details, or shall I remain in bated breath? Gamma asked, her hands in her lap. The trailer park, I said. Sue Poole's house. It's the only place Ned has to take Hank. He can easily keep him there and quiet. It's empty. It's a crime scene, Gamma said. Are you sure about this, Charlotte? No, but I don't know where else he would have gone. And if we don't get over there now, Hank might not make it through the night. Or the next hour. Do we know where Ned is? Delta asked. He was at the fight. Surely everyone hasn't left yet? How long has it been? Long enough that the audience has left, I said, right? Gamma pointed at the mannequins that bore our special black outfits, armored stretchy material that was bulletproof. You two leave for the trailer park, keep in touch, and suit up. Chapter 18. No eyes on the target, Gamma said in my earpiece. The last report we have is of him leaving after a brief interview with the press. He gloated a substantial amount about Hank Schilling being unwilling to face him because he was afraid. Copy. I moved through the shadows in the trailer park, keeping my steps as quiet as possible. Delta was a ghost beside me. She tapped my arm and drew me between two trailers. A moment later, a young woman strolled by whistling under her breath. Of course, Delta had heard her coming when I hadn't. How annoying. But that jealousy had waned a lot. I admired her, and the fact that she'd had the gumption to take what had happened on the chin, even though that had to be difficult when she was in the process of grieving someone she loved. Delta pointed, and we set off again. We reached Cotton Lane and found the chrome trailer shut up tight, lights on inside and the curtains drawn. Sue's trailer, yellowing, police line conspicuously absent, was dark except for a flicker of light inside. Candlelight. Delta headed around the back of the trailer while I took the steps and pressed my ear to the door. "Your problem, man? Please. I haven't done anything wrong. I thought we were friends." "Friends? How could we ever be friends?" That was Ned's voice. "You've spent years undermining me, competing with me, acting like you're better than me." No answer from Hank. "It's written all over your darn face. Even now, you think that you're better than me. I'll show you how much better you are than me." "Please," Hank cried out. "Please wait. I can't." "You don't deserve her." The words came out as a shout. "That's a lot of noise," Gamma said. "And it seems like things are about to escalate." She said it like she was commenting on the consistency of Lauren's red velvet cake batter. "Perhaps it's time to summon help, girls." "We can't call the cops," Delta murmured. "I can't." "I have an idea," I breathed. And then I backed down the stairs. I crept around the side of the trailer and picked up a rock. Delta joined me. "You bang on the side of the trailer?" I whispered. "I'll throw a rock at the neighbor's front door. If we time this right, it might work out. Ready?" "Ready." Delta lifted her fist. 3, 2, 1. I lobbed the rock at the chromed-out trailer next door, just as Delta hammered her fist against the side of Sue's home. We retreated into the surrounding trees and watched. The woman opened her door and came out, just as Ned emerged from Sue's trailer to find out who'd caused the commotion. The woman frowned at him. "Who are you?" she asked. Sue's ex-husband." Ned gave her a grin. "I'm Sue's ex-husband." "He's a quick thinker," I murmured. "Was that you banging on my door?" "No, that was, Ned shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "No idea. I heard a noise too. Excuse me." And then he re-entered the trailer. Hank, for what it was worth, took that moment to call out for help, and the neighbor lady's fingers flew to her mouth. A second later, Ned crashed out of the trailer and started toward her. "Charlie," Delta said. "He's going to hurt her." She started forward. "Wait." I grabbed her arm. "Just wait." The woman fled into her trailer and managed to slam the front door before Ned could reach her. I let out a breath as Ned banged on her trailer door and tried to jerk it open. "That was close," Delta said. "Too close." "You really should have put in the camera contacts so I could watch all of this unfold," Gamma said. "I'm sure I could have convinced Lauren to make me some popcorn." "Hilarious, Georgina." "My comedy tour is sold out," she replied. Ned kicked the door repeatedly, and Delta grew tense beside me. "We have to stop him." "Trust me, that woman is calling 911 as we speak." The words had just left my mouth when Hank stumbled out of Sue's trailer screaming at the top of his lungs. His hands were tied up at the wrists, and he had a cut above one eye. "Help. Somebody help me." Ned turned on him, but another resident of the trailer park arrived, and then another. People from all over ran toward the commotion and surrounded Ned. He put up his hands, backing away. "Now, come on everybody," Ned said. "This is all a huge misunderstanding. There's no need to get." "He kidnapped me," Hank said. "My name is Hank Schilling. I'm a boxer. I was meant to fight tonight, but he kidnapped me. He was going to kill me." A burly man with a beard stepped out of the growing crowd of onlookers. "Get him." They pounced on Ned, bringing him down in the grass beside the trailer. The wail of sirens approached. "I think that's our cue," I said. "The cops are going to be here any second." "He could break free," Delta replied. "We need to make sure everyone's safe." "Delta," I turned to her. "If we stay, you're going to get caught. We've got to get you out of here." She met my gaze, her eyes filling with understanding. The understanding that I cared, because I did, even though I had struggled with my envy of her abilities, even though she was a better spy than I ever would be. She was my family. Let's go, I said, taking her by the elbow. Together we moved through the woods and toward the road, away from the trailer park and back toward the Gossip Inn. Chapter 19. 2 days later. He'll be here any second, Delta said, checking her watch. It was past midnight, and I sat on the front porch, sunlight in my lap and Gamma beside me. Delta's suitcase rested on its wheels, the handle extended. She leaned against the railing on the porch, letting out a breath once in a while, checking her watch, tilting her head back. I'm going to miss this place. It was so peaceful while it lasted. We're going to miss you, Gamma said. Yeah, I agreed. Delta, I'm sorry. She gave me a smile that made her face even prettier. I'm sorry too. I should have given you a chance rather than shutting down. I was jealous of you. Wait, what? You were jealous of me? I asked. Yeah, she laughed. You get to live in this beautiful inn, you're not constantly on the run, and you get to spend time with family and friends. I haven't been able to do that in years. I miss my parents and my friends. I miss feeling like I could be a part of a community, but I guess that's the price we pay for what we do. You're a great spy, I said. I was jealous of you too. Delta came over and threw her arms around me, and I hugged her back, even though I wasn't that much of a hugger. It felt like a good thing to do. Here he comes, Gamma said. A sleek black car drove up the gravel driveway toward the front of the inn. It parked, and a man dressed in casual clothing got out and came over. He handed Delta a bag, a letter-sized brown envelope, and a phone. You have 5 minutes to read the packet, destroy it, and say your goodbyes. And then he walked back down the stairs and got into the car, the engine still running. I guess this is it, Delta said, and opened the bag, change of clothes, and then the information packet. She sat down and scanned the contents. What are you? Gamma asked. Seriously? She muttered. Another ice cream truck. But they towed the old one, I said, pointing to the empty spot where her ice cream truck had been parked. Yeah, she said. Apparently I'm getting a new food truck, but I'll be on my own this time. Her voice squeaked. She shook her head. And my name will be April. I assume they'll furnish you with the food truck or at least money to buy one. I travel around on my specialty ice cream truck from state to state, she murmured. And I'm a loner because I've just lost the man I love. Her eyes filled with tears. I looped an arm around her shoulders and tugged her into my side. That was how it worked with identities. It was much easier to play the part if the identity hit close to home. I'm sorry, Delta, I muttered. I know this is tough. I wish you could stay for longer. That's fine, she said. Once this has all blown over, I'll visit you guys. She dried her tears with a tissue offered up by Gamma. But I guess that depends on whether your covers are still intact or not. The car engine revved. I have to go, she said, and tore up the piece of paper. Gamma took the pieces from her. Delta got up, and I hugged her one more time. Gamma took her turn afterward, patting her on the back awkwardly. Delta took her suitcase, her bag and phone, and walked down the steps. She loaded the items into the trunk of the car, then opened the door and stood beside it for a second, staring up at us and the inn. She waved one last time, got into the car and shut the door, alone. Tears welled up in my eyes and Sunlight meowed at me, lifting his little paws onto my chest and craning his kitty neck to lick my chin. I'm fine, I said, stroking his back. We're fine. The car drove down the long lane, the red lights dwindling and eventually disappearing. Gamma hit a button and the wrought iron gates at the end of the path shut. Well, she said, how unfortunate. Yeah. I rested my head against the inn's shiplap wall behind me, listening to the soft night noises. But Gamma said, we have bigger fish to fry. Your cop boyfriend, for one, we'll have to deal with him sooner rather than later. I don't think he's told anyone yet. I don't know what his game is, but we have to wipe his memory before he does something we'll regret. Wipe his memory? Gamma asked. That depends entirely on who he's working for. If he's an agent for an enemy organization, we'll have to do more than wipe his memory. My stomach twisted. You think he's an enemy? I'm not entirely sure, Charlotte, but we can't be too careful. The man is aware of who you are, and he's going to figure out who I am with a bit more digging. So we'll deal with him. Gamma touched her hand to my knee, then got up. I'm off to bed. Don't stay up much longer, Charlotte dear. We've got lots of work to do tomorrow. And then she left. I doubted she would get much sleep. My grandmother wasn't great at showing her emotions outwardly. She preferred to cry when no one was around. And I didn't blame her this time. It felt like we had lost a friend. If Aaron wasn't careful, I was about to lose another one. I had the cats to care for, a good book to read, and a plan for the future. Find out what Aaron Good was up to, and stop him, no matter how much it hurt to lose another friend, no matter the cost. I wouldn't sacrifice the gossip in or my relationship with my grandmother, and if Aaron was collateral damage, so be it. Come on, Sunlight, I whispered. It's bedtime. I carried my ginger cat upstairs and into my bedroom, then dropped him onto it, grateful for what I had. I wouldn't make the same mistake of letting my ego get in the way of my happiness again. My life here was too precious.
This has been Red Velvet Droplets by Rosie A. Point. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more cozy audiobooks.